They said we were damned before we ever drew breath, born beneath black banners, suckled on ash and oath. We were raised not to live, but to persist. The Black Legion does not offer comfort. It offers purpose sharpened into a blade. I remember the first time I felt it, the burn of Lorgar's scripture scorched into the ruined skin of a flayed chapel wall. The stench of promethium and bone, the silence of stars that no longer cared. We marched, not for vengeance. That implies memory. We marched because something ancient had whispered our names in the warp, and silence had answered. We are not brothers. We are not warriors. We are the refuse of a broken Imperium, hardened into spite. This is not a story of heroes or villains. This is life among the fallen. The eye watches, and memory rots, but some truths remain. Share them. If this chronicle survives, sitched in data slates, or passed in half-remembered oaths, let it be known. Like, subscribe, speak the names of the forgotten aloud, and perhaps the stars will listen once more. It begins with the Aichi chest beneath the seals of the gauntlet, where the ceramite meets scar tissue and nerve graft. No salve cures it. No ritual soothes it. The pain is a whisper now, constant in background, but once it screamed. It is not infection. Infection fears us. It is memory. Memory of the man beneath the armor, the flesh that once bled clean before the black, before the eye, before the betrayal became ritual. The deck groans beneath our tread. This cruiser has no name worth remembering, some ruined relic of the Great Crusade, repurposed and bled dry. Rust coils like vines around the bulkheads. Oil drips like blood from the vents. The scent is always the same. Machine sweat, flesh rot, the chemical afterbirth of sacrifice. We are 28 strong in this warband, or were, last cycle. Numbers mean less here, names even less. But still we mark them, still we count. There is no command, only precedence. The strongest leads, until he doesn't. My pauldron still bears the sigil of the Luna Wolves. I don't scrub it, I don't speak of it either. Others did once, not now. In the Black Legion, you wear your heresies like skin, not banners. Let the false ones tattoo their gods on their chests and scream their devotions into the void. We know better. Oaths are tools. Belief is fuel. Discipline is the only law. That is how we have survived this long, by not becoming what we fought. Mourning, if such a word can exist in the eye, comes with the sound of a chain blade revving against a bulkhead. It is not aggression. It is ritual. Charon does it before every sortie. 6 strokes against the metal, 1 for each betrayal he claims to remember. I've seen him take apart an Iron Warrior's defector with surgical joy, humming the strokes to himself as he does not speak often, but when he does, his voice is clearer than the vox. Food is rare. Sustenance comes from the flesh reserves, harvested long ago and sealed in canopic vaults. They rot slow in stasis, even slower once treated. The taste does not matter. Hunger is a choice here. Pain is the only constant. Every brother carves from himself to stay sharp. Ritual cuts along the inside of the arm, beneath the armor plates, unseen by others. It's not about pride, it's about control. The warp cannot take what you already own. I served beside Vorthan once, before he tore out his own eye and replaced it with a dead servoskull's optic. He claimed it saw truer. I never asked what he meant. He doesn't blink anymore. His bolt pistol is fused into his gauntlet, flesh and machine indistinct. He rarely misses. He hasn't spoken since the silence, a battle none of us recall clearly, but all know by scars. Sometimes, in the maintenance holds, he hums a tune. No one joins. No one stops him. Punishment in our warband is swift. There are no codes, only precedents. If you falter, you fall. If you fall, you feed the blade. There was one Terex who tried to hold a relic from the corpse god's temple we raided on Ralvex. Thought it might protect him. Thought it might mean something. We didn't even need to decide. Karen simply gutted him mid-step. No words. Just the hiss of breath, the wet crack of ribs, and silence. The relic was thrown into the warp engine's maw. It screamed as it burned. I do not dream often. When I do, I remember the color blue. Not ultramarine heraldry, sky Terra's sky, or perhaps just memory pretending. I haven't seen blue in over 4 millennia. The eye has its own colors that pulse, that shift, that taste like copper and smell like ash. The warp does not forgive memories of peace. It punishes them. I wake with blood in my mouth and metal under my nails. I am lucky. Some of us still mark the old hours. We keep time on flayed skin strips hung near the engine room. The warp makes mockery of days, but ritual remains. There is a sense that if we stop marking, we stop existing. That's the difference between us and the others. The Night Lords lose themselves in memory. The World Eaters lose themselves in rage. We do not lose. We refuse. Our current campaign is nameless. The planet has no designation, no defenders. It is a cinder, a test, perhaps, a punishment. Abaddon has not spoken to us in cycles. If he ever did, his orders come like thunder from broken stars, translated through warp mirages and pain. We obey not out of loyalty, but inertia. The long war is not a commandment. It is gravity. When we land, we expect resistance. We are met with dust, buildings melted into glass, air that tastes like battery acid. One of us young by our standards removes his helm and breathes. He does not last long. His lungs burst. He does not scream. No one records his name. We press forward. The objective is irrelevant. We carve symbols into the ash as we walk. Not chaotic, not imperial, just marks, proof of presence. The wind erases them behind us. Vorthen laughs, first sound in weeks. I want to join him. I do not. Karin stops by a crumbled statue in ecclesiarch by the robes, now eyeless and bent at the waist. He decapitates it with a single stroke, then kneels, not in prayer, in fatigue. His vox clicks 3 times, short, code for nothing, or maybe everything. I move on. Night falls, or something like it. The sky swirls in bruised colors. No stars, just light without source. We encamp in the ruins of a manufactory. Its machines still twitch, though power is long gone. I rest against a conveyor belt that once carried shells. Now it carries dust. I remove my gauntlet. The itch is worse. The skin beneath is blackened, laced with metal. It pulses with my heartbeat, slow and sullen. I stare. I do not recognize it. I put the gauntlet back on. We sleep without sleep. Always one watching. Always one sharpening. Not for enemies. For each other. For the silence that creeps in when memory stirs too deep. We have no peace. Only continuity. It began as static, a dull hiss in the side channel. The kind you tune out. The kind you let bleed into the void while you focus on kill zones in line of sight. But then it spoke. Not loud, not urgent. Just clear like a blade laid on glass. No identification code. No squad prefix. No encryption signature. Just words, shaped like command, folded into the static. I remember the first sentence. Hold position. Wait until the sun screams. The sun didn't scream, but the air did, a few minutes later, when a warp surge flayed a whole column of Night Lords in the valley ahead. No one had reported the voice, not formally. We don't file reports, but the looks exchanged between legionnaires over scorched helmets. The brief hesitation before orders were given, the way men stopped speaking into open voxel of it, said the same thing. We heard it. We didn't choose to. I keep my helm on at all times now. Not because I fear poison or shrapnel. I fear clarity. Without the filters, the voice is worse. It finds its way into the open air, rides the breath of dead serfs, hums through cracked vox units long stripped 4 parts. Once I removed my helm to check a filter, and a voice whispered my name from behind me. I was alone. Karen claims the voice is a remnant to psychic stain left from the siege of Terra. He says some of the greatest commanders screamed their last orders so hard into the ether that the warp etched them into itself. Now they echo, repeating, bending, waiting for ears. He believes this. He cut the ear from his helm to listen better. I watched him do it. No anesthetic, just iron will and a blunt blade. When I asked what he heard, he looked at me without blinking and said, "Our father never forgave us." Vorthen has a different theory. He says it's the ships, old machine spirits gone senile, trapped in loops of command logic and warsims. He says the voice changes on different decks. Higher up, it sounds like doctrine. Lower down, it sounds like regret. In the engine halls, he once heard it weeping. Sometimes the voice helps. During the assault on Shatterhold 9, when the storm blinded our optics and the Auspex returned only gibberish, the voice whispered coordinates. We followed. We should have died. We didn't. Found a power conduit tunnel that bypassed the kill box entirely. The voice stopped once we were through. We won that day, if winning means standing when others don't. But other squads weren't so lucky. The Blood Gorgons followed a voice too. It led them into a recycling silo, sealed behind them. The air turned to acid. Took them 6 hours to die. One broadcast his own death in real time. Said the voice told him this was proof of faith. Said he understood now. Said he was grateful. Then nothing but bubbling static and flesh-stripping noise. Command if it can be called that issued a disregard unverified transmissions. As if verification exists here. As if anything in the eye obeys protocol. We laughed. Then we stopped laughing. Then we stopped talking. There are days I hear it sing. Not words. Not melody. Just rhythm like battle chants echoing across iron vaults. I feel it in my bones. My warplate vibrates in sympathy. The others hear it too. We don't mention it. Not because we fear punishment. Because we fear attention. One legionnaire Newblood name unspoken tried to trace it. Said he found an old cum tower, half buried in warp-grown coral. Said it was still active. Said he'd found the source. We followed him, curious, bored, maybe even hopeful. What we found was a shrine. Vox units fused into a pulsing altar, wires like veins, screens flashing images from a war we never fought. One showed a fleet arriving at Calth. Another showed Abaddon weeping. None of it real. All of it wrong. He touched the altar. It screamed in all our heads. We dropped him where he stood. Not out of hatred. Out of necessity. His blood shorted the Vox. The images stopped. The air went cold. We left the place unmarked. The voice returned days later. Quieter. More insistent. You will break orbit in 6 hours. Reinforcements inbound. There were no reinforcements. There never are, but we left anyway. 2 hours later, the moon cracked. Literally split fault lines glowing, demons screaming from the core. We didn't look back. Some say the voice is the War Master himself, fragmenting across the warp to lead us individually. Some say it is the Emperor's final curse, luring us like moths to immolation. Others say it is our own psychic residue, echoing through corrupted machine spirits and half-living Cumarays, that we are hearing ourselves from battles not yet fought. All of these may be true. None matter. I tried turning it off once, scrubbed my Vox, purged every channel, rerouted to physical signals only. Silence. For 2 days. Then I heard it again, not through the helm, but through the hilt of my chainsword. It vibrated with each syllable. You left him behind. I don't know who. I don't ask. Trust is currency in the Legion. Scarce, forged under fire, spent in seconds. But now even our own thoughts feel suspect. The voice changes cadence sometimes. Sounds like brothers we lost, like officers we hated, like our own voices. Once it gave the right command in my voice, and Vorthen hesitated. That's how he lost his second arm. We no longer speak commands aloud in battle, only gestures, only code blinks through helm visors. The voice mimics too well now. It issues kill orders in Abaddon's tone, then laughs. It chants false litanies in High Gothic, mocking prayers none of us remember, but all still recognize. It once told us the war was over. It once begged us to surrender. It once cried like a child. The youngest among you spy service, not Adric hears the voice. His helm is filled with spools of whispered data. He says he will decode it, says there is a pattern, says it predicts movements, tracks warp tides, maybe even gives prophecy. He doesn't sleep. His pupils have vanished. I think he believes it, loves him. When he speaks now, he does so in thirds. 3 voices, 1 mouth. We keep him alive, not because we need him, but because we need to know how far it can go, how far we can go. Tonight, the voice said something new. He is coming. It did not say who. No one asked. Hierarchy among the Black Legion is not written. It is enforced. There are no medals, no promotions, no votes. There are only acts that are remembered and acts that are erased. Reputation is the only currency, and even that rots if not refreshed with blood. We do not salute. We watch, we wait, we strike. The chain of command is not a chain. It is a blade, passed from hand to hand, slick with the blood of those who clung to it too long. We had a warlord once, Varenthes the Pale. He stood 7 heads taller than the tallest among us, his warplate etched with the bones of 20 loyalist chapters. He wore no helm, only a crown of broken Achilles, and a mouth full of gold teeth, carved from chapter masters he'd slain. He ruled for 60 years, not through charisma, through demonstration. He burned his enemies, ate his rivals, and crucified questioners to the air. None opposed him, until Karen did. It happened in silence. There was no challenge, no ceremony, no words, just one night. A quiet footfall in the corridor chapel, where Varenthes offered blood to a rusted throne once bearing the Aquila. Karen followed, a step behind, 1 swing, a severed head. No honor duel, no warband consensus, just an action, and no one questioned it. Not because they feared Karen more, but because he acted when the rest of us only watched. From that day, the hierarchy shifted. No one said Karen ruled. He simply became the pivot. Orders flowed through him, not from him. He never asked. He never corrected. The moment someone hesitated, they were dead. Not always by his hand. The Legion polices itself. Some try to build loyalty within the warband. Small allegiances, pacts, promises of mutual defense. These rarely last. Trust is provisional, conditional. Every favor carries debt, and every debt is a weapon waiting to be turned. Vorthen once protected a new blood from being flayed during a supply dispute. 3 cycles later, the same new blood tried to garrote him in a maintenance duct. Vorthen broke his neck with a servo cable, then wore his spinal column as a trophy for a week. No one mentioned it. Even silence is strategy. The way you stand, how long you wait before following an order, how often you reload your bolter, even when unnecessary. All of it is performance. Everyone is watching. Everyone is waiting. The most dangerous man in the room is never the loudest. It is the one whose presence requires no acknowledgement. Punishment is not codified. It is collective. If one among us fails, we decide without words who will correct him. Sometimes that correction is a beating. Sometimes it is exile into a sealed compartment. Sometimes it is a duel, not for sport, for record. These duels are swift, brutal, and final. There is no crowd, no referee, just 2 legionnaires in a corridor. One walks away, the other becomes an example. There is a place on the ship we call the spine. It is a long, narrow trench between two redundant gravity coils. No lighting, no ventilation, no cameras. It is where challenges happen, not officially. But when two legionnaires enter the spine together, only one returns. We pretend not to notice. But when one reappears, dripping and silent, we all record the change. Nothing is said. Everything is known. Symbols carry weight. The way you decorate your armor. What trophies you keep. What you destroy. One warrior Markin, the Holowants, painted his armor in the bone dust of slain claimed it made him immune to warp suggestion. When the voice in the Vox mocked him in his own tone, he lost composure. That moment, just one stammer, one flinch, was all it took. Another legionnaire took his place. Marcone was dead by morning, shot mid-sentence. No one claimed responsibility. Those who seek formal leadership often die quickly. Anyone who names themselves Lord invites challenge. Those who act as if they already rule, however, often go unchallenged, so long as they never say it. Power must be assumed without declaration. The moment it's spoken, it becomes targetable. Sometimes, politics escalate, warbands fracture, alliances shift. We've had battles where one half of the squad turned on the other in the middle of a siege, just to reset the chain of authority. That is acceptable. As long as the objective is taken, no one cares how many died getting there. Numbers are secondary to discipline. Victory matters, but hierarchy must remain lethal. We once took a bastion world Madrada, IX undefended, save for a single planetary governor and his mechanized guard. The kill was clean, the plunder minimal, but within hours of the conquest, 3 internal executions occurred, a dispute over who claimed credit for breaching the command spire. No one even remembered who had fired the first shot. What mattered was who was willing to kill for the narrative. Every kill is a statement, not to the enemy, to the Legion. I still matter. I am still sharp. I am not afraid of consequence. The warp does not punish betrayal. It punishes stagnation. If you are not ascending, you are decaying, even in moments of rest. Some among us eye each other, calculating when their moment will come, when the current apex will stumble, hesitate, bleed. That is the signal. That is the permission. And yet, in all this chaos, there is a strange cohesion, a rhythm. The constant threat of violence forces precision. No wasted words, no posturing. Every command is vetted by blood. The result is brutal efficiency. We do not argue. We act. We do not petition. We eliminate. There are whispered tales of warbands that tried to instate councils. Shared power, rotational command. They are dead now, or worse, broken into fragments, absorbed by stronger groups. Democracy is a fiction. It dies in the void faster than breath. On the rare occasion when a warlord rises, truly rises recognized, not just within one ship, but across multiple fleets, it is because they have killed so many challengers, no one remembers the last survivor. That is how Abaddon rules, not by virtue, by record, by action, by unbroken precedent. We are not that, not yet. We are the knife just before the plunge, the hand waiting near the hilt. The flicker of thought, could I? The answer is always yes. The question is, whether you are ready to die to prove it. Tonight, Vorthen sharpened his blade longer than usual. Karin did not watch. That is a statement. We came to Solvax Delta expecting silence. The Forge world had gone dark 200 years ago, swallowed not by war, but by absence. No Vox, no beacons, no screams. That kind of quiet unsettles even us. Death we understand. Screaming is familiar, but a world that forgets how to speak, that's something else. The shrine was beneath all of it, hidden under levels of Manufactoria debris, sealed behind a blast door that hadn't rusted, hadn't warped, hadn't even taken a scratch from the centuries of planetary decay. It simply waited. The door recognized no code, but it opened for us when Karin placed his hand on it. He said nothing. None of us did. There are moments that demand silence. That was one of them. Inside, the air changed. Cold, but not physical cold. It pressed on the mind, not the skin. A dry kind of pressure. The light came from candles, hundreds of them lining the walls, each aflame with a blue-white fire that casts no shadow, no smoke. Their wicks did not shorten. The floor was obsidian, polished smooth, but unmarked by foot traffic or dust. We left no prints. Even our weight felt wrong, like we weren't fully touching the surface. The iconography was unfamiliar. Not the double-headed eagle, not the 8-pointed star. No skulls, no wings, no chains. Just line spirals within spirals, branching fractals, shapes that suggested movement even while standing still. Vorthen stared too long at one and started bleeding from the eyes. He didn't notice until we pointed it out. Some said it was Xenos, others, an older sect of the Mechanica. One whispered it was a proto-shrine from before even the Emperor's time, a remnant of forgotten worship. That one was silenced quickly. Not killed, silenced. There's a difference, we argued. Karan wanted to leave it untouched. Said it had no part in our war, and thus no right to shape our fate. Vorthen wanted to claim it, take its fire, extract its secrets, bend it into something useful. I wanted to burn it. Not out of fear, out of instinct. Some things aren't meant to remain. Then, the youngest among us, Ra-El-knelt. No one told him to. He hadn't spoken since landing. Just followed orders, watched, recorded. Now he was praying. No words, just breath. Slow, steady, his hands open at his sides. The fire nearest him dimmed, shifted color, from blue-white to deep violet. The temperature dropped. We could see our breath. We told him to stand. He didn't respond. We moved to seize him. That's when the shrine reacted. The air grew thick, not heavier, like it resisted movement, like it wanted us to watch, not interfere. The flames all turned at once, flickering toward Rael, a low tone, like distant thunder, stretched into a note, vibrated through the walls. Our Vox units died. Not static, not interference, just nothing. Then Rael vanished, no burst of light, no scream, no warp distortion, just gone. One blink, he was there. The next, not. His armor, his weapons, his breath, his solif, he had one wiped clean. The floor where he knelt bore no mark. The flame he prayed before now pulsed slower than the others. Vorthen moved first. He fired his bolter into the nearest wall. The shrine absorbed it. The rounds disappeared, mid-flight. No impact, no ricochet, just silence. That's when the cold truly set in. Our armor systems couldn't register the drop, but we felt it, like the heat was being unraveled from our blood, one molecule at a time. Our breath crystallized mid-air. Vorthen's bolts froze in the chamber before he could reload. Karan drew his blade, not to fight, just to feel something solid. He pressed the edge to his palm, drew blood, smeared it across one of the strange symbols. The symbol didn't glow, it didn't shift, but the flame before it snuffed out. We left. We didn't run. That would be cowardice. But we left. The door closed behind us. This time, it hissed, a mechanical sigh, as if disappointed. No one spoke on the ascent. Vorthen kept glancing back, as if expecting Rael to reappear. He didn't. When we returned to the surface, the world had changed. The suit storms had cleared. The sky bled purple and green, clouds forming geometric shapes before unraveling into static. The manufactoria we'd passed through were no longer ruins, but pristine, intact, sealed, untouched by time. But when we tried to enter, they crumbled at our approach, like paper castles pretending to be real. Rael's name had vanished from our data. His supply markers were gone. His bunk was empty. His vox logs were erased. Only our memories remained, and even those felt fragile. The next night, we checked the recording logs from our warplate cams. Static during the shrine, nothing else, as if it never happened. But the cold remained. Even now, cycles later, one of the flames from that shrine follows us. No matter the ship, no matter the planet, somewhere near the barracks, near the munitions hall, or sometimes flickering just outside the viewport, a single blue-white candle, burning with no source, untouched by atmosphere or physics. Some call it a curse, some call it a mark, others won't speak of it at all. Karin watches it sometimes, says nothing, but when it burns lower, he sharpens his blade. Vorthan tried to extinguish it once, reached out with his gauntlet. The flame didn't resist, it just moved, appeared behind him. Talieran colder, he hasn't tried again. We don't pray, we don't worship, but now, before each battle, we pause just a breath longer than necessary. No words, no ritual, just a silence filled with memory, not for Rael, for the cold. He does not speak when he appears. He never has. Not in these sightings. Not in these half-broken retellings, whispered between blood-slicked decks and corpse-piled trenches. They say he simply walks boots, crushing ash, gaze fixed forward, eyes burning with a light no lumen could mimic. Ezekiel, the first among us, or something like him. The stories begin where logic ends. Always the same pattern, a battlefield soaked in failure, where a warband has lost cohesion, morale, direction. Then a figure, towering black-armored, clad in the echoes of legend. No ship logs confirm his presence. No orbital auger detects his signature. No Vox reports his arrival, and yet squads fall silent. Retreat halts mid, blades lower. Bolters click back into place. Order returns, not through discipline, but through proximity. I did not see him, not directly, but I felt something during the collapse of Bastion Threx. The walls had melted under Laskinen fire. The rubble smoked with chemical gas, and our flank was broken by loyalist drop troops, wearing the heraldry of the Celestial Lions. We were down to 9. Karan had taken a bolt round to the chest plate. Vorthan was bleeding through his helm, muttering in a language none of us recognized. We had no command, no path forward. Then the enemy stopped, not out of hesitation, not strategy. They simply froze, all of them, one mid, one still shouting a war creed that never finished. For a moment, the battlefield was still. I turned my helm to the left and saw them, the lions, kneeling, weapons lowered, as if they saw something behind us, something worthy of reverence. We turned. There was nothing, and then we were alive again, moving, fighting, killing. But I remember that pause, that reverence, and the look on the loyalists' faces. Not fear, awe. Others have seen more. There was a warband, out of the Carrion Gulf, who claimed he walked among them during a warp breach. They had lost control of the Gellerfield mid-jump. Half the crew shredded by demonic tides, the rest locked in ritual loops, repeating the same kill command over and over with no target. Then he came, not through the door, through the wall. He burned with a pale corona. The deck solidified under his step. The warp recoiled. He placed his hand on the reactor core and whispered a word none could repeat. The ship righted, sealed. The survivors clawed, their own eyes out in gratitude. Another tale comes from a traitor within the Iron Warriors, though how his testimony escaped is unknown. He reported seeing the War Master on a dead moon orbiting the broken ring of Griffin 4. Said he stood atop a pile of wrecked titans, his claw raised, not in defiance, but in judgment. Said his mouth did not move, yet he heard the words, "You have forgotten why we fell." The Iron Warrior screamed for 3 hours before silence took him. His squad put him down, not out of mercy, out of envy. Of course, there are skeptics. Even among us, There are always those who cling to reason like it's a relic. They say these sightings are warp residue, hallucinations seeded by demons, or self-propagated visions from minds collapsing under millennia of war. That Abaddon is flesh and blood, strategic and deliberate, and would never waste time walking ghost-like through failure and ash. That these are just stories told by legionnaires desperate for meaning. But then how do we explain the aftermath? Every warband that reports a sighting, ranks solidify, rivalries dissolve, objectives, once vague or forgotten, become sacred. Warriors who saw nothing still move differently, as if they were watched, judged, found wanting, and now clawing their way back toward relevance. I've seen brothers break in ways they never did before. One tore the Chaos Star from his pauldron and burned it in a barrel of corpse fat, saying only, "He didn't look at me." Another began reciting pre-heresy litanies of discipline with each bolt reload. One shot himself in the leg to remind himself he could bleed. None of this is ordered, none of it explained, but the pattern is there. Karen claims to have seen him once. He never speaks of it aloud, only when pressed. Even then, he speaks slowly, like carving each word from bone. He says it happened during the Battle of the Hollow Scar, in the moments between victory and retreat. Said Abaddon stood among the fallen, helm in hand, his face unaged, his eyes full of contempt not for the enemy, but for us. Said he nodded once, then turned and walked into the warp, without resistance. Vorthan doesn't believe, says these visions are fangs grown by demons to bite our faith, that if Abaddon truly walked the field, none would live after to speak. He calls these echoes a test, not of obedience, of clarity. If you need your father's shadow to fight, he said once, you are already dead. And yet, even Vorthan flinched when a helmsman claimed to see a figure walking across the prow during warp transit. I wonder, sometimes, if these visions are not him at Albet, what he left behind, that the Despoiler has cast his own echo through the eye, a template of presence that wears his form, that when we near death, or drift too close to the unreal, we do not see Ezekiel Abaddon, but the idea of him, weaponized. Or perhaps it's worse. Perhaps something ancient, nameless, beyond demon or man, has chosen to wear his face. There are prayers now, whispered by some between campaigns, not to gods, not to chaos, but to him, not asking for favor, asking to be seen, to be counted among the worthy. I've heard them, simple, blunt. Let him walk where I fall. Let the black blade pass judgment. Let my failure be unseen. I have never spoken them, but I have thought them. The last time we took a moon, the final kill came not by bolter or blade, but by silence. The defenders' loyalist PDF dropped their weapons and knelt in unison, said they saw him in the sky, said he raised his hand and told them to die. They obeyed. We never found bodies, just armor, weapons, and an afterimage on our auger scans, one frame, one shape, 7 feet tall, walking away from the heat signatures before they vanished. He is not our God, but he is watching. We do not use names, not in the Black Legion, not truly. There are designations, kill records, reputations born from victories or betrayals. But the old names, those that tied us to Legion, to origin, to self, they are burned, cast aside in fire and warp. Naming yourself as weakness, it implies continuity. Continuity is a myth. We do not come from anything. We were forged in the break. But he found his dot. It began on a dead frigate, adrift in the Halax Rift. The vessel had no engine trail, no heat signature, just a slow spin through vacuum and silence. A world-eater's wreck by the markings, but long since gutted. Our warband boarded to strip what was left: plasma coils, munitions, data, the usual. We sent in 5. Only 4 came back. He was the one who stayed. When he returned, hours later, he said nothing. Not at first. Just walked differently. quieter, more deliberate. I noticed first when he repainted his shoulder guard. No chaos sigil, no warband glyph, just a single numeral, 13. The others mocked him. Quietly, of course. He didn't respond. That silence unsettled them more than any defiance. It was not pride, not defiance. It was memory, and memory is dangerous. Weeks later, he began refusing orders, not overtly, just slight hesitations, delays, pauses where there shouldn't be. He stood too long over the bodies of ultramarines, not gloating, not spitting, just watching, like he recognized them, or pitied them. Vorthan beat him once for delaying the purge of a command bunker. He didn't fight back, just took the blows, stood up after, and walked away without a word. No one intervened. That's the rule. Hesitation demands consequence. But after that, something changed. He stopped responding to the name we had given him, Cradius. We had called him that for decades. He refused it now, ignored commands spoken to it. When pressed, he simply said, "That is not my name." It was Karen who confronted him, not with violence, with a question. "What is your name then?" He said it. I will not repeat it, not because I fear it, but because it wasn't meant for us. It was a name tied to another time, another legion, another war, a Terran name, not from Calth, not from Ultramar, Terra itself, one of the early ones, and he remembered everything, not just his name, his recruitment, his induction, the taste of recaf in the dawn air of the Himalayan plateau, the first time he fired a bolter, the oaths he took, not to the Emperor, but to the dream of unity. The dream that broke. He found a picked capture in that frigate, grainy, faded, but clear enough to see his own face before augmetics, before the pallor of warp touch, before centuries of decay. A younger man, hardened, but human. There was clarity in his eyes, and something else. Doubt, perhaps, or hope. He kept the image with him, clipped inside his breastplate, never showed it, but we all knew. You could feel its weight in how he moved. Then came the changes. He began cleaning his armor more thoroughly, removing excess trophies, scraping off rust, not for vanity, for memory, as if each layer removed brought him closer to that image, that name. During the purge of the Scythefane on Belzer Minor, he spared prisoners, not out of mercy, out of disinterest. Said they weren't part of the war, not his war, not anymore. He fought only those who recognized what he had once been. He fought like a loyalist, not in allegiance, but in posture, form, precision over brutality, discipline over spectacle. There was no frothing, just efficiency. He moved through enemy lines like a man fulfilling a contract long delayed. No emotion, no pleasure, just necessity. The others grew nervous. Some whispered that he was reverting, that the warp would reject him, that he'd become a beacon for something worse. One night, Karen asked him, "Do you regret it?" He answered, "Not yet." That answer held weight, not denial, not affirmation, a suspension, as if judgment had not yet arrived, but would. We all watched him, waiting for the corruption to consume him, or for revelation to break him. Neither came. What did come was silence. He stopped speaking altogether, not as protest, as release, as if language had nothing left to offer. Only movement, only intent. During the siege of the Deep Coil Fortress, he walked through plasma fire without flinching. His armor peeled, his flesh cracked, but he didn't slow. He planted a melt-a-charge at the core and walked out through the flames. No prayer, no roar, just ash and momentum. Afterward, when we regrouped, he stood apart, not elevated, not exiled, just apart. The others didn't challenge him. Vorthan didn't speak his name again. Curran never gave him orders. He needed none. And then, one night, he was gone. No alarm, no breach, his bunk untouched, his gear intact. Only the picked capture was missing. Some say he found a ship and fled. Others say the warp took him, claimed him as a contradiction to complete to ignore. A few whisper that he went to Terra, to walk once more the place where he was born, not to redeem but to remember. I believe none of that. I believe he remembered himself so completely that the eye could no longer hold him. That chaos, for all its power, cannot consume a man who has already accepted what he is, not in fragments, in whole. He was the first of us I ever saw become real. The cruiser was nameless, its hull markings burned away, its prow sheared off like a tooth snapped from a predator's jaw. We found it adrift between storms, its trajectory a lazy drift toward nothing. The warp winds around it were calm, unnaturally so, the way a forest goes quiet before the kill. No demons circled its shadow. No psychic shrieking bled through the hull. Even our augurs always warped into gibberish by the irreturned clean signals. No threat, no presence, nothing. We boarded expecting ambush. Guns raised, blades primed, boots heavy on dead deck plates. The air was stale but breathable. Lights flickered but held. Gravity functioned. We swept every corridor twice, mapping the layout. No traps, only empty halls and dust motes floating like stars. The ship felt asleep. At first we didn't notice the change. It began with the air warm, almost comfortable, no trace of iron or copper temps. Then the silence, a true silence, not the dampened hum of void, but a softness that pressed against the helm like a gloved hand. Even the whispers in the vox, the static sighs and muttering fragments, fell silent. The constant itch beneath the warplate eased. The armor felt lighter. Our weapons steadied. Kern removed his helm first. He never removes it. His scarred face caught the dim glow of lumen strips. He inhaled and exhaled. No taste, he said. No smell. He sounded bewildered, not suspicious. Just confused. Vorthen followed. His augmetic eye flickered, then dimmed. No noise, he muttered. No noise at all. We made camp in the main hangar. No orders, just a collective pause. For the first time in cycles, no one sharpened their blades. No one watched the perimeter. Some even removed their gauntlets, flexing scarred fingers, as if relearning the shape of their own hands. It was disorienting, the absence of vigilance heavier than any threat. Then came the laughter. At first it was brittle, uncertain, a chuckle at an old memory, a muttered joke about Karen's missing ear. Then deeper, rolling, almost human. Legionnaires, who had not smiled in centuries, began trading war stories. Someone produced an old ration block inedible by any measure and carved it into the shape of a bird. We laughed at that. The sound echoed strangely in the hangar, as if the ship itself laughed with us. Sleep followed. True sleep. Not the micro-dreams stolen between alarms. Not the half-conscious drifting filled with static and blood. But sleep without images. Without nightmares. When I woke, I did not taste iron in my mouth. My hands did not shake. For a moment, I forgot where I was. I forgot what I was. It should have been a warning. By the third day, our edge dulled. No one drilled. No one performed maintenance rituals. Armor seals remained unpolished. Bolters stayed unloaded. Vorthen's augmetic arm began twitching not in combat readiness, but in idleness. He started humming again. Karan no longer traced his 6 strokes on the bulkhead each morning. He sat instead, staring at his palms, as if reading lines that had faded long ago. I felt it too. My thoughts slowed, but not in confusion, more like being submerged in warm water. The endless hum of hate, the gnawing hunger, the whisper of the war pall muted. In its place came stillness, not joy, not relief. Just a quiet that wrapped around the bones. We began to talk about things we had not spoken of in millennia. Terra, brothers lost. Victories that once mattered. Even regrets. Not as confession, as memory. The words felt fragile, like artifacts uncovered from ash. One night, Vorthen dreamed. He woke weeping, not from pain, from the dream itself. Said he saw his homeworld before the Imperium came. Said he smelled rain. None of us mocked him. Some envied him. On the 5th day, Rock, the youngest among us since Rael removed his armor entirely, sat cross-legged on the deck in only his scarred skin. Said he felt light. Karin didn't stop him. None of us did. We watched, silent, as he closed his eyes. His breathing slowed, stopped. He didn't die. He just stilled, like a statue of flesh. We left him there. He never moved again. That night, the candle appeared. We had not seen it since Solvak's. A single blue-white flame, flickering at the edge of the hangar, casting no shadow. Its light was softer here, warmer. We gathered around it without speaking. For the first time, it did not feel like a curse. It felt like a beacon, like permission. Karin reached for it. His gauntlet hovered just above the flame. He whispered something I couldn't hear, then lowered his hand. He did not take it. He did not snuff it. He simply bowed his head and stepped back. I realized then what this ship was. Not sanctuary, not shelter. A lure. The warp cannot always break you with fear. Sometimes it breaks you with stillness. Mercy is another form of corrosion. Hatred sharpens. Peace blunts. The Eye had given us a pocket of silence, not as a gift, but as a test, to see what we would become when stripped of pain. We failed. Our muscles weakened. Our reflexes dulled. Even our rage, the one constant thined. By the 7th day, our warband resembled ghosts, drifting through the corridors without weapons, speaking in low voices, hands bare, helms removed. We were losing ourselves, not to madness, but to memory, to the suggestion of who we might have been without the long war. That's when the ship moved. No engines, no thrusters, just motion. Slow at first, then faster, a steady glide toward a swirling vortex ahead. No alarms sounded, no impact tremors. We did not resist. Some even smiled. The vortex pulsed like a heartbeat. Its center glimmered pale blue, like the candle's flame. Karin was the one who broke it. He drew his blade and cut his own palm. The scent of blood iron, hot, real, hit us like a shock. The candle flickered, the warmth receded, the whisper of the warp returned. Screams followed the ships, our own, the Eye's. Everything shuddered. We ran, not out of discipline, out of survival. We sealed the hangar, cut the boarding lines, and launched ourselves back into the void aboard our The cruiser drifted on, unmarked, into the vortex. The candle vanished. Rock remained behind, cross-legged, eyes closed. Back aboard our own vessel, we armed ourselves again. Sharpened blades, polished armor, reloaded bolt. The itch returned under the gauntlet. The whispers hissed back through the vox. Vorthen stopped humming. None of us spoke about what had happened, but the silence had left its mark. The warp had shown us its gentlest weapon. It would not need to show it twice. We found her in the ashes of Retho Primus, a world that had once hosted manufactorums capable of churning out 1,000 lemon rust holes a month. Now it was cratered glass and corpse vapor. The plague had come first, then fire, then madness. We arrived long after anything worth claiming had already been lost except her. She walked alone across the slag plains. No escort, no weapon, barefoot, wearing a soot-stained shift that had once been white. Her skin was clean. No boils, no blisters, no Her eyes did not glow. Her limbs did not twist with mutation. She was not warped. She was not Imperial blessed. She was simply there. We watched her from a ridge overlooking the broken hab hives. Vorthen wanted to kill her immediately. Nothing survives here, he said. If it does, it shouldn't. Karin said nothing. He stared. His finger rested on the trigger of his bolter, but it did not move. I couldn't speak. I was watching the child walk through a corridor of flame, and the fire parted around her. Not violently, not as if pushed. It simply refused to touch her. She passed through a field of corpses, left from a cultist skirmish. Filth-caked bodies, twisted into grins, flies nesting in their throats. She did not flinch. One of them moved half alive, gurgling in pain. She paused beside him, looked down, touched his forehead. He stopped moving, not in death, in calm. He smiled. Then he died. None of us moved. We followed from a distance. Tactical spread. No formation. There was no need. She walked with the steady rhythm of one who had never known fear, or worse, one who had known it and discarded it entirely. She never looked back, never acknowledged us, but I felt her glance each time I blinked. Kharon was the first to speak. She's not a symbol, she's a question. What kind of question? I asked. He didn't answer. We tracked her for 9 hours, through ash fields, through collapsed chapels and hollowed shrines where the statues of the Emperor had melted into grimacing stone. She paused at each one, looked up, not in reverence, not in fear, just looked, as if remembering something distant and irrelevant. We ran scans. Biosigns were stable, too stable. Heartbeat like a metronome. No adrenaline surges. No hormonal spikes. Brain activity unreadably our augurs returned null, as if there was no mind to read, or as if it refused to be interpreted. Vorthan moved to intercept. He stepped directly into her path, weapon lowered but ready. She did not slow. When they were a meter apart, he raised his arm, not to strike, to block. She stopped, looked up. For a moment, I thought he would kill her. I think he thought the same. Then she raised her hand and placed it gently against his chest plate, just above the secondary heart. His armor hissed, not from heat, from withdrawal. The plating around her hand peeled slightly, as if retreating. Vorthan stepped back, not out of fear, but because he couldn't remain. He didn't speak for hours. She continued walking. We considered taking her, binding her, studying her, but no one gave the order. Even the idea of commanding her felt wrong, like speaking profanity in an unknown temple. Every time I tried to say, "Take her alive," the words twisted in my mouth. That night, we made camp in the ruins of an Arbite's bastion. She sat alone by the cracked command dais, her back straight, her eyes closed. Not asleep, just still. We argued in hushed tones. "She's a psyker," one said. "She's a clone," said another. "She's a lure," said Vorth. Something chaos built to see if we'd notice, to test whether we still know what innocence looks like. "Innocence is a lie," I said. "Exactly," he replied. Then Karin spoke. "What if she's not a lie? What if she's the last true thing?" No one answered that. By morning, she was gone. No footprints, no trail, just an imprint in the dust where she had sat, shaped like a sunburst. Not warm, not hot, cold, bone-deep cold, like the kind found beneath tombs. We searched pointlessly. She was no longer in the ruins. We split the squad, scanned the planet for Bato signs, reran satellite loops. Nothing. But one by one, reports began to surface from Vox chatter, stolen from other warbands. Sightings, similar girls, same face, same eyes, always alone, always walking, never killed. Those who tried to kill her vanished. One squad tried to capture her. They recorded it. The picked feed is grainy. They circle her with chain blades and power glaives, barking orders. She looks at each one, and in that moment, they stop speaking. One by one, they lower their weapons. One falls to his knees. The feed ends with silence. Another warband set a trap mined a route, positioned snipers. She walked directly through it. The mines didn't trigger. The snipers didn't fire. One put a round through his own scope. Whispers began to spread that she was the warp's apology, that she was the Emperor's last daughter, that she was the first demon given human form not to corrupt, but to test. Quran never spoke of her again, but he began carving a symbol into his blade, one that matched the shape of her handprint on his armor. I saw him do it once, slowly, carefully, as if afraid to get it wrong. Vorthan grew more violent, short-tempered. He executed a brother for hesitating during a breach. When I asked why, he said, because he reminded me of her, of what we forgot. I began to dream, not nightmares, dreams of sunlit fields, of wind without ash, of children playing in a garden walled by stars. Each time I woke, my chest hurt, not from fear, but from loss. I'd forgotten what it meant to feel clean. Then the voice returned, in the Vox. Only once. Only one word. Soon. We do not know if it referred to her, but I think it did. She is not a child. She is not a symbol. She is a mirror, and we were never supposed to look. It began as rumor, as most heresies do. A name whispered over corrupted Vox lines, buried in static, too garbled to trace. The hollowed path. Not a warband, not a fleeting idea. A path out of the eye, out of the long war, out of everything. They said they were Black Legion once. Not the broken fragments of shattered legions, but true initiates. Veterans of Cadia, survivors of the Blackstone campaigns. Names etched in record. Faces blurred by time. And one day, without warning, they turned. Not against the Imperium, not even against the War Master. They simply vanished. At first we thought it a purge. Perhaps the warp consumed them. Perhaps they angered something older than chaos. But then came the signals, partial, stuttering, barely legible. Vox bursts from ships with no registry. Coordinates stitched into garbled machines. Requests for refueling, for repairs, for passage, not surrender, not repentance, just escape. We intercepted one of the recordings from an automated relay floating along the edge of the Ocularis Thraxis. The voice was dry, mechanical, too clean to be human. This is hull breach patched. Supplies dwindling. No gods, no masters, no war. We are still hunted. We are still alive. There were others. Fragments, desperate and raw. They don't forget. Even when we forget ourselves. Do not answer their questions. They come wearing your own voice. They killed the demon, but it smiled when it died. Black ships. Not Imperial. Not ours. They smell like silence. We began piecing together their Ruta spiral, moving outward, away from the eye's core. Always just ahead of the storms. Never quite escaping. Warp charts placed them near the pale reaches, a region avoided even by the lost. No stable stars. No known anchor points. Nothing but void wrapped in pale light. Karin grew restless. He said nothing, but his rituals changed. He began watching the stars more closely. He listened to the silence between transmissions. He stopped mocking the ones who spoke of the hollowed path. Vorthan, on the other hand, was furious. He called them traitors to the betrayal, said their abandonment was worse than heresy. It was disobedience without ideology. To kill the Emperor is one thing, he spat. To forget he ever mattered is another. And yet, we all listened. They were few, those who tried. A single cruiser and 3 escorts. Refitted with stolen mechanicum cores and void shield harmonics we did not recognize. Some say they had psychers who cut themselves off from the warp entirely. Others claim they found a machine spirit older than the legions, one that whispered directions in a language only dreams remember. What we know is this: they were hunted by demons, first screaming things that bled, contradiction and spoken memories. The recordings captured it. Screeches that weren't sound, claws that pierced hull and mind alike. But the warband held, scarred, damaged, still whole. Then we came. Not we, exactly, but others like us, loyalists to the cause of unending war. Black Legion cruisers dispatched not with orders, but with understanding. No command was needed. The heresy of peace cannot be allowed to exist, even in silence. They caught one escort near the rim of the Hadean flux, vaporized it before it could scream. The main cruiser escaped. It jettisoned its wounded into the void. Escape pods set adrift not toward safety, but away from pursuit. We found one. Inside was a single legionnaire, his armor scorched, helm cracked, lungs bubbling with void sickness. Before he died, he rasped only this: "We remembered who we were. They hated us for it." We dissected his armor. No chaos sigils, no warband insignia, just a symbol etched into the inner plating. A circle, broken at one edge. A path leading out. Others reported sighting phantom vessels with dead engines, still moving faster than light. A broadcast of a lullaby sung in Old Chthonic, drifting through an abandoned system. A bolt shell with no primer, stamped with the word enough. And always, the same question: what happens if a legionnaire no longer wants to serve? Not the Emperor, not the gods, just nothing. There is no answer. Some say they made it, that they found a place beyond the eye, beyond the Imperium, beyond anything. A system cloaked in perpetual eclipse, where no warp trace can reach, where no name echoes. A place without memory. Others say they died torn apart by what hunts those who step off the path. That chaos itself cannot abide silence. That if you do not fight, you must be devoured. But the signals keep coming. Just one, now, repeating, broadcast across thousands of empty channels. We are still leaving. Karan listens to it sometimes, alone. His blade remains sharp, but he speaks less now. Not from fear, from consideration. Vorthan destroyed one of the receivers. Said listening was the first step to desertion. No one replaced it. But others built smaller ones, hidden, quiet. I think of them, sometimes, not with envy, not even with hope, just with curiosity. What did they see in that final stretch beyond the eye? What did they feel when no voice screamed in their heads? What did they become when the war ended, not in peace, but in absence? We are taught that there is no end, no retreat, that chaos is eternal, that the long war has no ceasefire. But what if that's a lie? Not from the Imperium, from us. What if we need the war more than it needs us? I wonder if they still dream, or if they gave that up, too. We were not sent here. No orders reached us. No fleet escorted us. We made planetfall in silence, in the soft drift of orbital decay. Our dropship cracked on entry, half the hull shearing off over the polar ridge, and no one marked our descent. No auger, ping, no warp screech. Just fire and gravity and impact. When we stood again, half our number were missing. We did not search for them. We simply began walking. The world is nameless. It was once charted in Agrimone or a listening post, but its designation is long erased. Now it is wind and shale, rust-colored dirt. No fauna, no structures, just trenches left by a war no one remembers. We took one, not for strategy, for shelter. It barely reached waist height, but we widened it, carved it deeper with knives and shovels, armored our edges with shattered plate. There is no enemy. There is only the trench, and us in it. We have been here for weeks, or years. Time bends in the eye, and without the warp screaming, without the gods watching, it flows wrong. The sun, if it is, a sun rises once every 2 cycles, a dull gray smear in a maroon sky. The nights are long and without star. There is no rotation, only murk. We hold the trench anyway. At first we built defenses, mines, tripwires, automated turrets rigged from dead. Then we dismantled them. They rusted without activation, froze in place. rotted under our own breath. We realized we were not defending anything. So we began building upward. The tower started as a marker 3 helmets, impaled on rebar, lashed with scrap, a symbol, a line drawn. But then one of us added another, then another. Soon it rose above the trench, helmets stacked and locked in place with melted ceramite and chainling. Each helm was scarred, some by bolter, some by blade, all empty. We don't speak of what it is, but we all know. It's not a monument. It's not a warning. It's a question. How tall can memory stand before it forgets itself? Karin placed the helm of a word-bearer at the summit. He didn't say where he found it. The red was almost pink with age. The mouth grill still bore the rune of Lorgar. When Karin lashed it into place, he whispered a word none of us understood. Then he stepped down and resumed watch. He has not left his post since Vorthon no longer wears his helm. He painted his face with dust, lines drawn from brow to chin in silent defiance. He sharpens his blade every day, even though we do not fight. He speaks only once per cycle, during the dusk lull, when the wind calms and the trench is silent. Then he stands, climbs the tower, and speaks a name, not his, not ours, just a name. Then he descends. That is his ritual. We light fires at first. We lit them for heat, then for visibility. Now we light them for attention. A line of signal pyres stretching toward the hills, burning low and blue with oil-soaked cloth. No ship answers. No signal returns. The smoke drifts upward, then twists, then vanishes. Not dispersed, removed, as if the sky is not real. One among Usalakrik's messages. He speaks into a broken vox bead, each time the same line. We are still here. Coordinates unchanged. Holding position. Still loyal. He says it, even though no one listens. He plays it back each night. Sometimes it stutters. Sometimes it plays in reverse. One night it answered back. His own voice, delayed by hours. But wrong. To calm, to clean. He erased the recording the next morning and cut out his own tongue. He still listens, but no longer speaks. I dream, now, not of battle, not of Terra. I dream of the trench, the same image every time. The tower taller than the clouds, swaying in wind that does not blow. At its top is a single helm, gold-trimmed, unsullied. A Luna Wolf's helm, mine. I wake with the taste of salt in my mouth. There is no ocean here. No salt. We once heard gunfire in the hills. A long roll of bolter bursts, then silence. We prepared for assault, readied positions, recharged packs. Nothing came. Hours later, we found the Sorsa recording device playing loops of an old siege from a war 10,000 years past. The sound was echo, not present. We brought it back and added it to the tower. Others have passed through. Renegades lost warband. Cults so deep in mutation, they no longer walk but slither. None stay. They watch us from afar, study our fires, examine the tower, and move on. We offer no threat, but we remain. A storm came, once, wind and ash, howling like forgotten gods. The trench filled with dust. We dug out by hand, blind and coughing. When the air cleared, the tower was untouched. Not a single helm shifted. The fires still burned. That's when we knew we were not buried. We were marked. I tried to leave once. Walked past the ridge, past the smoke line, into the salt flats beyond. After a kilometer, the ground cracked. I fell, not into a chasm, into another trench, identical. Same armor fragments, same fire pits, same sky. When I looked back, I saw the tower. I hadn't moved. Not really, not where it mattered. Now we speak our names aloud, once each cycle. Not to remember, to hear them vanish. The wind steals syllables, twists intonation. The more we say them, the less they mean. I used to be called something. I forget what. We still polish our blades, still clean our bolts, still reinforce the trench walls, not out of duty, out of rhythm. A warband must maintain its edge, even when no war comes, even when no enemy lives, even when no one watches. We hold because we do not know how to stop, because someone must remember the shape of vigilance, even when the stars have forgotten our names, because surrender requires an audience, and there is none. We who were forgotten still burn our fires, still climb our tower, still whisper our names into dust, and until the end comes, if it comes, we will hold.